have to tell you that this is an all-city plan, and we've got a whole team of folks here that have, actually, it's largely due to this team that we were able to initially get the grants even to do this. So this is, I'm here to talk with you about the Lincoln-Lancaster County Welcoming and Belonging and Strategic Plan. This came about because, well, I've been talking about it for a long time, where I've been seeing through the network that I've worked in my nonprofit work that a lot of communities are doing these strategic plans like this. We had an opportunity to apply for a technical assistance grant through what was then called New American Economy. They've now merged with American Immigration Council and Welcoming America. It's called a Gateways for Growth grant, so you may hear me refer to that as well. The reason our application was a strong application when we applied to it was because of all the work that happens here in Lincoln and Lancaster County on a regular basis. The strong collaborations, the strong relationships, the work that's happened through the New Americanist Task Force, but also in each of the individual cultural centers and in the cultural centers as the Cultural Centers Coalition. We just had a strong base for that, and with really, truly the city's support for some of the events and activities that have happened previously. We had more than 500 local surveys. These surveys were done in 2019, just pre-COVID, but they were among immigrants and refugees. That's a huge number to have been able to collect. Those surveys talked about what people wanted from their community, how they were civically engaged currently, jobs that they wanted, and maybe education that they'd already attained in another country but couldn't apply here. So we learned a lot from that. We had more than 65 community members on the steering committee. They were from diverse sectors, and this included longtime community members as well as new Nebraskans, those people who are immigrants and refugees themselves. More than 70 agencies, the nonprofits that participate in the New Americans Task Force participated in shaping this plan. And we had some data from the American Immigration Council, which starts on page 34 of this plan that you see on the screen here. That's a really good place to go dig in if you're writing grants and things like that. There's additional information there. But certainly as we're talking about our community, kind of tells us who's really in the community, shows the growth of the immigrant population in Lincoln and Lancaster County. I believe Lancaster County's growth was 6% over the last 10 years. The immigration has increased by 6%. The immigrant population has increased by 16% at the same time. So it kind of shows you where some of the growth is coming from. So,
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
Councilman Ward?
Thank you. So, Commissioner, just to back up a little bit, so I asked for this pre-council because some of us, and I know you're giving the genesis and the background, but to be honest, until I read it in the paper, that's, I think, for some of us, the first we knew about it. So when you say we, are you talking about the county board? Are you talking about all of our?
That's a really good idea. Let me define that.
If you could give us that,
Yeah.
like the brainchild of this and how we got to the grant.
It wasn't in my notes, but yes.
Okay, I understand. Thank
It was
you.
in my head, and I had meant to
That's okay.
say that earlier. So the reality is, we had this steering committee, we had all of these members, we took it to the New Americans Task Force several times. The we was just a kind of a core group of us that were able to interact with American Immigration Council and Welcoming America to get that technical assistance. But the team really consisted of Adele Burke from the mayor's office, Mindy Rush Chipman from the Human Rights Commission, Lee Kramer from the Asian Center, Nazar Rashno from Lutheran Family Services, myself, Sarah Hoyle, and we wouldn't have gotten any of this done if we didn't have Jenny Ryan there to keep us on track and to keep us moving along and do the editing and those sorts of things. So that was really the core team that we met. We were meeting on a weekly basis, and we were taking this information out to the community on more of like a monthly basis or kind of an as-needed basis to get some of that steering committee input.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you will see, let's go through here. There's the beginning of this plan shows a lot of shows a lot of information about Lincoln's history with immigration. The Lincoln Public Schools and the university had some input into this. They wrote some statements that we were able to include. You probably all have seen this beautiful mural. There is a feature, the very last page, page 42 of this plan, actually features a story about David, who did this mural. The One Lincoln is highlighted here at the beginning. Our cultural centers are highlighted here. The New Americans Task Force. These are all to give a little basis to anybody that reads this about what's happening here in Lincoln and Lancaster County. The Career Ladder Program, which is a program that you've probably seen a presentation on that, haven't you? So the Career Ladder grew out of the New Americans Task Force. Lee Kramer really was the one that kind of pushed this forward, but it's an opportunity for people that maybe come in with some high credentials that they can't use them in the United States, they don't transfer, but maybe how they can get on a career path to use some of those skills, some of their innate skills, some of their learned skills, and move into a higher paying position and determine what kind of other education they might want to take. Here's a face that's familiar to you all.
I know her.
Yeah. So it was great. The American Immigration Council wrote this profile of Selene. Information that came from some of the surveys, a little bit about what Gateways for Growth are. And what I really wanted to get into with you here then is the areas, the recommendations that came from those community meetings. In addition to the meetings that I did outline, we did hold a few smaller group, more informal sorts of meetings with some key stakeholders to get a little more information. That information was all come back. That core team kind of deciphered it. Adele was amazing at going through the data and kind of writing it into words. And then we took this all back to the steering committee, had them kind of hone it, tell us what priorities were. We would have had a lot more pages than 42 had we not done that. So the first recommendation is really equitable access. And the vision was our community's services and opportunities are available to all residents, including immigrants. We know that there are a lot of services already that are available mostly through our cultural centers because they are our trusted individuals, trusted organizations out in the community. But some of it was how do we make a stronger connection to city government, to civic engagement, some of those sorts of things. Were some of the questions and the conversation that went into this. And you can see here, develop a brick and mortar welcoming center to provide direct assistance and referrals for social, health, and other essential resources. We have organizations that are doing that in the community. Besides our cultural centers, our resettlement agencies do some of that work as well. So that's certainly shouldn't be a function of government, but how do we support that, right? How does government engage and interact with that is probably one of the bigger questions. We know that they are working on I don't know if it's still going to be called Welcoming Center or where that name is, but some sort of a facility where all the cultural centers will be housed, and that starts to allow for no wrong door. Somebody comes in the door and they can find the service. So again, then maybe how can government interact there to be a bigger presence? Civic engagement and community connections. Our community fosters civic engagement, relationships, and communication among newcomers and long-term residents. Again, what can we do there to increase the awareness about opportunities and one-on-one connections? This is not a city or a county plan, really. It really is for the whole community to participate in. So I've had conversations with the chamber. They're definitely connected in with the career pathways work and some of that. So it's growing those kinds of relationships. Education. Our community provides the support that newcomers need to succeed in school and access higher education. The schools are doing great work in those ways. Already there's a lot of good stuff happening there, so a lot of these recommendations are just how do we do a little more. Certainly access to learning English in different kinds of opportunities. engaging teacher, staff, and administrators in ongoing high-quality professional development and training on implicit bias and institutional and systemic racism and cultural competencies. You know, we know some of this is going on, certainly, but how can that be strengthened? Economic opportunity. Our community harnesses the skills and assets of newcomers to ensure economic opportunity. This is one that we really have heard clearly from businesses, but we've also heard it from immigrants themselves. Safe and healthy communities. Our community promotes healthcare access and equity and fosters relationships of trust between residents and local law enforcement. I know Sandra has spoken to the My City Academy. My City Academy is a program for immigrants and refugees who maybe been here a little while and want to put down deeper roots, get more deeply connected in the community. And they do a series of sessions learning more about local government. I know the planning department, the election commission has met with them, Solani has met with them, Sandra has presented to them, I've presented to them. But one of the most important ones is when law enforcement presents with them. And that has been an extremely good two-way learning opportunity where immigrants or refugees are able to tell some of their story and how long it takes for them to get citizenship and a driver's license and those sorts of things, which were new to the police officers that were presenting. One quick story out of that grew a great relationship with the Corinne Society, who did not have a direct path to law enforcement previously. We're in this session, the director or the president of the Corinne Society was in this session, had a great conversation, invited the police officer out to one of their functions, did an interview with a police officer right there and translated it into Korean, and they broadcasted it out on a video, and that video sits on their website now. And one you haven't heard anything about, affordable and quality housing. You knew that was going to come up. One of the reasons this is really important is that some of the immigrant and refugee families are bigger families. And the housing on an economic scale that has enough space is not always available. It's much harder. And we're certainly seeing that with some of the people from Ukraine coming in more recently, where there's sometimes those are larger families as well. So those are the areas that people thought were priority areas. There are quite a few recommendations on those. Some of those recommendations I feel like we're already doing. We can go down and do some check some of those off, or see what we can do to enhance or make those better, right? But there were a few that were newer. The next steps are a little bit of the implementation. So we did receive now a monetary grant, $15,000, towards the implementation of this from the American Immigration Council and Welcoming America as next steps. And so we'll also receive some additional technical assistance from them. We have not had that coordination call yet to do that. But most of that comes from, there was one of the recommendations was to have a governmental staff person that would help coordinate some of this. I don't know budget-wise, I don't know where that sits or any of that at this point, but clearly it takes somebody doing some of this coordination. Coordination has happened thus far in different pieces. Certainly the cultural centers among themselves. Sarah has been certainly a bridge. Some of it comes to the New Americans Task Force, and it's kind of talked out, and people take different responsibilities for different pieces when there's an issue or a concern, something new coming up. But if we really want to make some changes, to language access and things like that, it probably is going to take somebody really leading the charge and being that coordinator. Even that small core group that I spoke about, we had trouble sometimes finding enough within our own other work duties to really pull this together. So that's where that could be, maybe that $15,000 could go that direction. I did want to note that on page 42 there is a profile of David Manzanares that did the butterfly mural, and Maysoon Shaheen, who you may know because she's now on the Aging Partners board. She also went through the My City Academy. Both David and Maysoon did go through the My City Academy, and certainly blossomed in the community. Except now David moved to Omaha, but. So that was really what I had. I would say anybody else is welcome to speak to any aspects of this that they have, or we would take questions that.
Are there any questions for Commissioner Yocum or Mr. McDowell?
Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I mean, on this, I was looking through here, you were saying this was put together with these groups, and you mentioned the Lincoln City Council on here. I didn't know what we did or who was involved from the city council to put this together, or?
There wasn't anyone directly on the steering committee. I think everybody had an invitation to participate in the steering committee initially, though. It would have been,
I don't think we did.
I don't know how many months back it would have been.
Yeah, there was nobody from the city council on your steering committee. You had, what, 50?
We had 70, yeah, we had 65, I think, community
Okay.
members on the steering committee.
Because for me, it was all new. When I heard about this plan, when I read it or saw it on the news reports, that's where I first learned of it.
Well, I'm sorry for that. I know I'd had a few individual conversations, but I couldn't say who I'd had those with. But everybody was initially invited to participate. It may have been one of those that didn't get picked up. Would have come from Jenny, I believe, but I can't remember how many months ago that was. Do you recall, Sarah?
No. I'll go back and look.
Well,
That's okay.
It's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. It's a great plan.
Yeah, yeah.
I love having it. And I'm really
And probably
enjoying getting
should've-
to know what it's about.
yeah, I should have had a conversation up front so that everybody was eager and wanting to participate.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Ward?
Oh, thank you. Are you done, Councilman
Yeah, sure.
McGinnis? 'Cause I can go. I have a few questions, but so people interject when you need to. My first one was, now what could the council role be? Because we are coming into it kind of late, which is, we've crossed that bridge already. So what do you see?
Well, and I think truly, receiving all this information to write the plan was critical. The implementation is really going to be important. And leadership voices are hugely important. And so, yeah, we'd love to have somebody from the city council participate, maybe a couple of you, absolutely.
Okay.
Ms. Ward, may I follow up on,
Yes,
on your,
please.
your
Yeah, sure.
question? Mr. McDowell, could I ask the same to you? What is the thought process behind the Gaylor Baird administration in terms of next steps from the city level, whether that's directly from the administration or from city council or what have you? Because we also have not heard, I don't believe, anything from the Gaylor Baird administration regarding this.
Well, I'll say, first of all, I'm new, so.
I know. Say that. And so if your answer is, let me get back to you, that is fair,
Yeah.
TJ. I don't mean to put you on the spot at all.
Well, I do want to say I'm sitting in Adele Burke's spot, so she had been, I think, quite involved, and so I'm sitting in that seat. And I know that the mayor is very, very supportive of this work and wants us to run lead on it. I was going to tell you about the current thing. One of the things that we were looking at is funding for the welcoming
Center.
for the person,
For
for the
staff
staff person.
position.
So I've reached out to some folks to see about possibilities for funding that position, and then realized that when somebody from the mayor's office calls, people think you can fix things. And so I heard this panicked report about some Ukrainian refugees who are coming through the not through the formal resettlement process,
Right.
but they're coming through what's called humanitarian asylum. And so we know that we have, several families here. The folks that are in the room have been working on that as well. So the Biden administration hasn't put the formal process in place yet. So they're coming on this way. There's some concerns about housing, as you've already heard, housing stock, especially for large families, transportation, healthcare. Healthcare is in particular one of those concerns. I know that the health department has been involved in those conversations, but in particular about mental health. These folks have endured some really incredible trauma, and so making sure they have the support for that, so they can heal and move forward. So I will be running point for the mayor's office on it going forward. It's a long way to answer your question. I don't know anything now, but tomorrow I hope to know something.
Thank you, Mr. McDowell. Sorry.
No, thank you that's a great question. I as a follow-up to that as well, for the commissioner or Mr. McDowell. So I think I heard during the presentation, it's really not a city or a county thing, but now I'm hearing maybe it is. Do you see it
There
more?
is a role for the city
Okay.
and county.
Like money?
That would be
Maybe.
one.
May I just put that out there?
No,
That would be one.
That's always important, but it doesn't have to mean funding like the whole program.
Right.
That's not
No,
what
I
it is,
understand.
right?
Yep.
It's, some of it is funding that has already been happening, but
Yeah.
how can we make that stronger or enhance
Sure.
that? You know, funding of
Sure.
things like cultural celebrations. The one that I'm really familiar with because I helped organize it for several years was Lincoln Unites. The city's always put some funding into that, whether it was parking passes or buses for transportation, you know, people to come and speak, those things have always been important. So that in those kinds of ways, if there was a staff, maybe sort of a liaison sort of position, this welcoming position, so that there is a stronger bond and constant communications with our cultural centers and wherever else that needs to happen, that certainly is one.
From government, from
Yes.
local government.
Yeah, from local
combined. Okay,
Yeah.
no, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think when things are happening like the Ukrainian crisis and the Afghan crisis, just being more in tune and aware of what impact that is on the community, and where we're seeing people that don't come through the regular refugee resettlement process, where those gaps are, and we know that these agencies are picking up some of those gaps. What is the support they need? I had another comment along that line, but now I've forgotten what it was. Oh, just, you know, a little bit Refugee 101. You know, refugees, when they come with funding for 90 days for housing, and the resettlement agencies have staff that help them access healthcare and, you know, get kids into school and get those first jobs. But that funding really only lasts about 90 days. There is some secondary funding that can, summer programming that they can get into sometimes, but a lot of the rest of what they need is absorbed by, you know, into the community, and some folks never get that. If they come through a process like an SIV process, they don't get that, an asylee process, they don't get that, or if they just come through any other immigration process, they don't get that support. And so if there was a governmental connection to kind of lead people to where resources are, those kinds of things would be helpful as well.
Makes sense. Thank you for that.
And it's more agencies than just these. I mean, like
Yep.
Lincoln Literacy, and, you know, there's a lot of agencies out there
Right,
that are doing
right.
those supports.
Sure. Could we talk a little bit about the bricks and mortar aspect that was mentioned and what I read after this was announced? Are we talking about the new cultural center, No Wrong Door building, or are we talking about something else for
So
bricks and
the
mortar?
bricks and mortar term was what came out of those recommendations. So that was kind of loose, right?
Okay.
But I see it, that this is a crucial part of that. I mean, and it's already in process,
Yep,
right?
yeah. It is, yeah, we're excited. Okay.
Absolutely.
So would that be, it's still loose, so we don't know if it's that, or is it, are you looking for another building, or what does that mean?
I don't think that there was ever
It was
intent
just, it was
that
just like a
the
goal.
government would do any sort of building
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this.
okay,
It would be
okay.
either would something be housed here on our premises, or would something be housed on their premises, that sort of thing.
Gotcha, gotcha. Lastly, I don't want to take other people's time. If you have questions, interrupt me. You probably sent it, but could we get a copy of the report?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That would be helpful, because I've noted the page numbers.
This morning I realized you should have had a link before today.
That's
yes.
okay. No, that'd be helpful now. I think that's it for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, and I think that brick and mortar, it was a term that was used for like just a place to go to,
You're right, and I
not
think
as
it.
in a building.
Yeah, right, I understand.
Yeah.
And I think it also mentions staffing at the time, and 15,000 is why it may seem like a lot of money. When it goes towards staffing, it doesn't go
I
very
know.
far.
I know.
And certainly I
Just
recognize.
maybe a start.
Yeah, and I recognize that need for coordination, but anyway, so,
Yeah, I
And that's-
realize that is not
yeah.
a
But it's-
staffed position at $15,000.
Yeah,
It's
no,
seed
I know,
money.
yeah, it's all good, so, okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for the commissioner? Councilwoman Washington?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I want you to clarify, I can't clarify, I'd like you to clarify a little bit more about that staffing position, because TJ, you at one point had talked about you being that person, but you were giving the example of the current Ukrainian refugee asylum seekers. But are you talking about the liaison position that would be housed at a welcoming center? And is it one position or more positions? How many FTE? are you talking about?
Yeah, so again, I think we have to flesh that out in this implementation stage, exactly what that means. But I would say right now, all the people that I named off that were on that core committee, those positions, those are people that have been engaged, but it's kind of an addition to what their responsibilities are. And so it's not that they should be disengaged, because we want everybody engaged, but it might be just for better coordination. So that one thing, somebody goes to Sarah with something, but that doesn't necessarily get in front of TJ or in front of the Human Rights Commission or something. And so who could be the one that kind of coordinates that a bit?
Thank you.
And I want to go back to when the Yazidis were wanting a cemetery, if you remember that whole situation. I mean, Sarah was deep in that, doing a lot of that work. And if there was, somebody that could kind of help coordinate that or make sure it's getting to the right person or those sorts of things too, it could be a relief of some of that.
Councilwoman Raybold?
Crystal, we've been a refugee relocation hub, ever since I was growing up, back in the 60s, with different waves of refugees that come.
Absolutely.
And then it always seems like the Lutheran Family Services or Catholic Social Services takes that initial lead for that 90 days. And then it's up to the churches and other communities, but then it becomes all the community cultural centers' responsibilities to continue to, and of course the school in a major way, to help that integration into our community. And I sort of heard, and I think we've all heard, the Community Health Endowment Board of Trustees is trying to come up with some way to unite all the cultural centers, community centers on an administrative level, but they're also talking perhaps, that brick and mortar facility to house all the different community centers and really combine all the resources. And so were they part of, they had to have been part of these initiatives?
Yeah,
and
there were
discussions?
people from some of the cultural centers that were deep, like Lee Kramer was in that core group, right? Others participated in the larger steering committee conversation. I'm sorry. I don't want to sit with my back to you. Yes, Tom was on that.
When it came to us, it was more like we've been talking about this for 2 years. So we didn't see a need for the city to start all over again and start saying, let's build something when, as the collaborative here, we've been talking about something similar to that. So when we had these are views that are coming from those who are coming in, and this is what they think will work best. So we listened and we said, oh, this is something we're already working on. So how about we work together and implement it, because there's no duplicating services.
Yeah. And hopefully that will lead to better coordination and less duplication, right?
It was a
Is
TikTok.
Lutheran
I don't
Family
know even on
Services
TikTok.
and the Catholic Social Services, are they integrated with all the cultural centers to be able to assist you and maybe do a handoff? Okay, this family, they have a house, now they need more educational, cultural training and workforce training, how to get a job and all that stuff. That seems to probably fall heavily onto your shoulders at that point in time.
It's not so much handoff directly from Lutheran Family Services saying, here's your new case.
Yeah.
They don't do that, but, once their cases have ended, then they might make a recommendation, like, you could probably go and get help at El Centro or Asian Center or wherever, and our staff are all in the communities anyway, right? So they already know the people. So it's not like they don't know who they are, right? So they know that these people are not getting services in this place, so they come to us and get services. And we do enough different things that it's not that it's like they only go to Lutheran Family Services at this time, and then they only go to Asian Center at this time. We do concurrent services too that are complementary to each other.
Councilwoman Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been remiss in thanking our cultural centers for all being here. It's rare we see you all in one time, so thank you for that. That's really great, whoever had that role. So, but my question is this: I don't know who can help me understand. So my own experience with refugees right now, and I know others on the council have experienced it in their own personal lives, is with an Afghan refugee family. 6 kids, mom and dad. Dad's the only one that speaks English. Nothing new to Commissioner Yocum or others of you. This is through St. Paul Methodist Church. And so it seems, so we have the financing for the 90 days that Commissioner Yocum managed, and we're about at the end of that, but that's all we got. And so all the rides for the vaccinations for the kids we've coordinated, and I know this is old news, but this is going to become important in my question. And then Dad got a job at Kawasaki that didn't work out, so I wasn't taking a turn, but taking Dad to work, picking him up from his night shift, and then something happened, it didn't work out at Kawasaki, and they were waiting for vans to come. I mean, so and everybody's stepping up for this volunteer project, but and that's one family. And so it's so overwhelming for volunteers all the time. And my role has been, I've met them and talked to Dad and took them an old TV that I couldn't believe still worked. And the kids thought it was great. But so my question is this, how do you see this collaborative helping out, the handoff to churches or the handoff to volunteers or the handoff to the cultural centers? But forgive me, are we just creating another layer or is it, and I'm not trying to be offensive, I'm just trying to ask that question, but how can we access more people to help besides volunteers?
I don't think we're creating another layer in a gatekeeper sort of way or anything
No,
like that.
not
right?
at all, right.
Hopefully it is so that there's better communication between the governmental entities and the cultural centers where people are going, or the churches.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I think about, the even New Americans Task Force, which is chaired by people from the different agencies who do that in addition to the job that they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes can't follow through on some things and that sort of thing too. There could be some help and support in that way. Because sometimes those issues do come through the task force, and there could be better, maybe, education on where to go when you have those kinds of questions or things to deal with.
Resource lists of when you can't find someone to give rides, this is who you could call.
Right.
Like a centralization.
Possibly, if
maybe.
that's a need, yeah.
Okay,
Possibly.
yeah, okay. I'm just trying to get my arms around how we can make this useful in my own personal life, for example.
Right.
Because we're all pretty, in this case, resourceful in the community
Right.
of who to call and when and how.
Which is a strength of the community.
Yeah, Lincoln is so fortunate that way, but at some point we have also, people are busy, they have, busy careers and lives and families, and so it's really a dilemma of how to help. So speaking to the choir.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that the Afghan situation is very unique for resettlement in general, in that it has taken the whole community to be able to do it, because there's so many people coming all at one time, more people than any one agency or any of all of our agencies, Good Neighbor Center,
Sure.
Asian Center, and Blueton Family Services,
Yeah.
Catholic Social Services, and Lincoln Community, Lincoln Literacy, and there are just so many agencies are just barely
I
able
understand,
to
yeah.
keep up, and so thank goodness the churches are helping out and the volunteers are helping out, and the state is trying to help coordinate, and it's just because it's just so huge. Yeah, so
The number's
it's
so
not
big.
it's not
Yeah.
normally like.
I understand, and was not meant as a criticism whatsoever. It is a volume thing, so.
And Sheila, do you anticipate the same thing with Ukrainians coming?
It might be a slower pace with the Ukrainians because, of course, they are waiting in their second country to
Right.
be resettled largely. There are folks that are coming have had some way to get here and usually have family members here. And so they're a little bit less dire as far as being put in a place and not having any access to where do I get food kind of thing. They do have local community, local churches here that speak their language. So it is not quite the same situation.
Thank you for mentioning that, Sheila. That's so true, and totally understand, totally.
I was gonna say, you can look at this report as a way of, you talk about layers, instead of thinking about those layers, you wanna make it flat so
Right.
that all these entities, we are all talking together. So I think the recommendations will definitely help everything that
Great.
Lincoln is doing, bring that work together.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Councilman Beckius?
Yes, Mr. Randa may have just answered my question, but I wanted to ensure that the cultural centers of Lincoln, that this is an initiative and work that you want to do and take on as well. I mean, sometimes I feel like conversations are had around you as opposed to you. Is this work you want to do?
I would say this is work we actually welcome because
Okay.
when the recommendations were out, we say
Mm-hmm.
we are already doing this.
Right.
Can we
Right.
find a way of
Right.
working on it together?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, I
Sure.
guess
As
the-
long as we're continually
Yeah.
involved in the process and like that we know that we're, kind of
Mm-hmm.
central to the process as
Mhm.
far as, and that's what's been the case.
That's what I can say, some of these things, we could say, we're already doing this, we can check them off. But do we need to do them differently? Do we need to do them better? Do we need, is there more volume? Do there need to be changes, would be things that,
Sure.
might
Sure.
happen along the way.
Sure.
Yeah, and the key word there is together because we might be able to do it, but we need your support. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that, I won't speak for other council members, I'll speak for myself. I think, Mr. Randa, that support is here, but, and something that I would also challenge the Gaylor Baird administration to think about too is what else does support look like? Because this is pretty minor support in the grand scheme of things. And, bless you, I want to, make sure that those corridors of communication are open to what else that support might look like. I certainly can't speak for Commissioner Yoakum, but from the city of Lincoln. And so I want to make sure that when we're sitting at these tables and what have you, that you're at these tables too. And that we are hearing what it is from you that you want to do, as opposed to, hey, we think there's this issue, can you tackle it for us? Okay? And so I don't know what that looks like going forward, but I just wanted to say that so that I have an expectation that you will tell me what you need, and then it's our job to try to get it. So, okay.
Councilwoman Ward?
One more question, if you don't mind, Commissioner Yoakum. If you're able to say, and again, not speak on the behalf of the county commissioners, but have they been briefed? Is there a general feeling of support?
There is definitely support, yes.
Okay, okay.
Now, as far as when we start talking about staffing positions.
Right,
Our
that's
budget's
different.
gonna be really tight, so that, that would take some more talking,
Mhm.
but absolutely supported at this point.
And one thing on that side of things, I think I would, the report identified a staffing position, what have you. I guess I would be interested to know from the cultural centers as to, is that a staffing support that is housed with them, that's not housed with the city or county?
And what do they want to write into that job description?
Right, right.
That would be helpful.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to those questions, but
Yeah,
I think it's for them to answer.
yeah, yeah.
That'd be great.
Any further questions or comments from the council?
Yes, sir.
Let's have the folks in the audience introduce themselves.
Yes, that would be great.
If that would
I should have done that.
Start with John.
Wouldn't I? Yeah.
John Goodwin, Executive Director of the Malone Center.
Oh, no, it's the Oscar clap.
Volleyball clap, just for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Sheila Dorsey Vinton, Director of the Asian Center.
Suzanne Mueller with the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska. I'm a patient experience coordinator for the health clinic. I got you.
Romeo Guerra from the Center of Las Americas. I want a standing ovation.
It's hard to follow that.
I'm Tom Randa with the Green Acre Community Center. Thank you.
And Tom ran the half marathon yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's walking.
I
I saw him walk in, yeah, this is good.
And I can't introduce myself because I have a different hat on today. So today I do not have an LPS hat on. I am the project developer, very much behind the scenes for the Cultural Centers of Lincoln Collaborative. Better known as Mama Bear.
All right. Any further questions? Oh, Councilman Show?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been to many of your sites and locations, and there's always something fun to do and learn about cultural diversity in our community. I know El Centro is having a fundraiser in a few days. Are there other events that you as cultural centers would like us to know so we could share with the community coming up in the near future?
Our 30th anniversary celebration will be May 22nd. We'd love it if all of you would come. We're having our founders come to speak. I believe the mayor will be there as well to speak. And lots of dancing and cultural things and food and.
Where and when?
It will be at Lancaster County Events Center, 1 to 5.
Always a warm reception at the Asian. I mean, people want to, the hospitality is great at those events.
What we have going on next month, because this is May, it's Juneteenth. Would love to see every last one of you there dancing, eating, you know, doing the electric slide, all of that.
Facebook Live.
Facebook Live, yes. June 18th, we're thinking about doing another day after at Mount Zion, which will be a gospel celebration. So myself and Reverend Combs we're trying to hash that out this week to see if that will work. But we know definitely that June 18th will be our celebration from 11 to 5 at Trago Park, right across the street of the Malone Center.
For us, we have Samples of the World, September 18th, more food, more music.
If you haven't done that,
Yeah. Zubar.
Yeah, we're at the Zoo Bar Thursday, celebrating Cinco de Mayo. We're getting the gate money, so come on over. And then September 17th, we also have the Latino Festival at Antelope Park.
and they just have wine chocolate tango. And don't tell the others, but that's my favorite. I tell everybody that.
No, curry clash is good too.
I like all of the above. I actually did dance just a little bit this year.
Yeah, you did.
My new niece.
You got your own film now.
Oh no! Oh no! I didn't think about that.
Harvest Moon Festival for the Lincoln Center is September 10th. That's also at Antelope Park, the Old Pavilion band shell area, and then Curry Clash. Benny is a
Yes.
Yeah, it's November 3rd.
Awesome. Any other further comments or questions from anyone? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and break until our directors meeting at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Ready?
Thank you.
Break.